Here she goes with another mop video, but hear me out. This is the last one, but we need to address the claims that the Ocedar Bucket Mop can be replicated by any simple bucket system. So today we're going to be comparing two very similar bucket systems. I thought they were very similar until I started to use them and found out that they are completely different. The Ocedar Bucket Mop uses a foot pedal system versus the Libman Tornado Mop uses a hand crank lever. Is it a crank? Is it a lever? But it's a completely different system to wring out the mops, and today we're putting them to the test to once and for all debunk which bucket mop system is truly the best. The Ocedar Bucket Mop has a cowling around it here that cannot be easily pulled out. You can pull it out if you'd like, but you gotta add in some force. With the Libman Tornado, anytime you want to remove the cowling, you take it out and it's like a little basket that sits on top of the bucket system. When we're talking about water capacity, you can tell that the Ocedar system is able to hold more water compared to the Libman Tornado. Now, this can be beneficial because the Ocedar Bucket Mop can become heavy versus if you don't have a lot of water, this is lighter to move around. However, that part also comes with a con. I noticed that as soon as I started mopping my floors, the Ocedar Bucket Mop did not have the tendency to slide around and move around the floor like the Libman. Starting off with the mop heads, the Libman had a more fluffy and round appearance of the actual mop head itself and seemed to be more dense when it came to the fiber. Both mop heads attached easily to the handles themselves and were very easy to put on and to go ahead and get started mopping. Now, here's the biggest difference between both systems. The Ocedar uses a foot pedal to wring out the water versus the Libman, which uses the hand to wring out the water. Honestly speaking, for myself, I could have been done right here and determined a winner for myself personally. I felt that using my foot was so much easier to wring out the water versus having to use my hand, because the tricky part with the Libman handle is that you constantly have to unlock the handle, wring it out, and then lock it back in, because if you don't relock the little lever, it tends to slide the pole up and down. With the Ocedar, you're able to use your foot to wring it out very easily. You're not bending down, you're not doing any of that. You're simply using your foot and you don't need to apply a lot of pressure. Versus with the Libman, you do have to wring it out by basically unlocking the lever and then you're pushing up and down on the handle itself. Then you're relocking and making sure that when you relock that your mop head is at the correct angle and at the correct position. I found this to be tedious just to make sure that my floors were clean. This was an extra step that I felt like we didn't have to do. Because this is heavier, sturdier, and a thicker plastic, when I was washing the floors, this did not move around. When I was wringing out the mop with the foot pedal, even applying full force to it, this did not slide around on the floor, versus with the Libman, even if my mop head was slightly in this chamber right here and I am trying to wring out the water, this was sliding all over the floor. It was getting it wet underneath and it was just leaving smudges. It was inconvenient. I did not like that. If I was going to ask Ocedar to make one improvement on the mop, it would be to add wheels to the actual bottom of the bucket so that it's a lot easier to slide around if needed. However, I can understand why they don't place wheels on the bottom, because if you have wheels, there's more chance for the bucket to move around as you're wringing out the water. So take that as you will. When it came to ease of use, both buckets were pretty easy to use, I would say, and both handles were pretty easy to use. Both poles were extendable and I was able to make them the proper height to fit my height. I also love that I can use the mop heads for multiple uses. The Libman can also be used to wash walls. It can be used to get vents. Basically anything I can use my Ocedar for, I would be able to use my Libman mop for. The other thing that I really did not appreciate about the Libman mop was the fact that if I wanted the mop head at a certain angle, I actually had to position it with my hand. Otherwise, it locks in at a certain angle and it stays there. So when you are using it, unless you unlock it, reposition it, you're stuck at the angle that it's at. This can become quite challenging if you're trying to wash around different areas of your floor, from baseboards to floors to walls. Those are different areas and they all require the ease of movement of the mop head. And that's something you don't typically think about until you actually actively try to do it, and you can't. So then you have to take your hand, unlock it, reshape the angle, put it to the angle you want, and then go ahead and use it again, which again, it's an extra step that can totally be avoided. However, the one thing that I do think locking the mop head angle at would be great for is if you're doing something like walls and you need a specific angle and for it to stay there and not bend back and forth. For that, I think it's great, especially if you're just cleaning baseboards. You can lock this mop head at a specific angle of the floor, and then you're able to freely go ahead and get the baseboards and it's not moving around like this. So for that reason, I do think it works well. I also want to mention that I've had the Ocedar Bucket Mop system for about 3.5 to 4 years, I think. And I have used the mop heads and washed and rewashed and rewashed a lot of them. And after washing them, they might look dingy, but they still stay fluffy. They still stay that microfiber material. The biggest con that I saw was that after I had washed the Libman mop head, it became very stringy. And what I mean by that is if I were to run my fingers through it, I will show you guys, it just becomes super stringy and almost lint-like. So the fibers, they end up pulling a lot more. And I don't think that this mop head holds up as well as the Ocedar fibers do. So for that reason, that was very disappointing. Now let's talk price point. For whatever reason, the Libman Tornado, I don't know if it's because of the branding, I don't know why, but this Libman mop is more expensive than the Ocedar mop. And if you look at just the basic construction, the plastic on the Ocedar is a lot thicker. It's a lot better made. It has a stronger bottom. The pedal itself is made really well. And then you go to the Libman bucket, and as much as I want to be optimistic about this little feature where you can take out the basket, there's not really a reason for why I would need to do this. And then this also creates a place for me to take a look at the plastic, and the plastic is definitely much thinner. So I think that this would not last as long as this bucket system right here. And for this being more expensive than the Ocedar, it kind of confuses me as to how they came up with that price point. Now, whether you choose to go with a foot pedal or a hand crank system, this is just one thing you need to know. When you're using the foot pedal, you're doing everything in one step. You're not bending down and you're using the force of your leg, which is a lot more convenient. It gets the water out faster and you're able to get the mop head a lot drier. And with the foot pedal, you get to control the dampness of the mop head itself. When you're using a hand lever, hand crank, however you want to say it, I don't feel like you get as much control as you do with the foot pedal system. I still think you can do a really great job cleaning your floors with the Libman, but with the price considered, the quality, and just how well these mop heads hold up, I mean, this is going to be the last time I make a video on this, but once again, I'm going to declare that this is the smartest, the best mopping system that is on the market for mopping floors. And for the price being so affordable, I love that this is going to last you so many years. The mop heads are not expensive to replace, and before you even replace them, you're gonna get several months of use out of them. Well, there you have it. But before you go, would you let me know which system you think is better, the foot pedal or the hand crank, and why you think that? As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next one.